Okay. Alexis, do you want to go first? Should I or how?
Oh, sure, I can go first. Okay, sorry, I'm not on camera today, but I'll be on soon. But so, hi, my name is Alexis. I am a third year accounting major. I am the youngest of four older brothers, and I was born in Berkeley, California, but I've always lived in like a small city called Sin City, which is next to Fairfield, about an hour away from campus. Um, I like for when I was younger, I was really big in basketball because I was really heavily influenced by my brothers. So I played from the ages 5 to ninth grade in high school. But I continued to play sports throughout. And one of my biggest passions is social justice, but also, of course, a little bits of finance. And I'm just really excited to talk with you today about your life and your history.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Alexis. Thanks. I'm likewise excited to be able to meet with you all. Thanks. Thanks
Of
for the
course.
introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Alexis, for sharing. Um, my name is Natalia Cortave. I'm a second year psychology major. I grew up in Oakland, born and raised, so kind of seeing that change from Oakland, how it was now to how it is today, has really made my passion for psychology become stronger in every way. Just so I can hopefully one day help that same community that has so graciously helped me, and kind of just to become a voice for lower income communities and let them know that mental health help doesn't have to be a luxury and more so a necessity. And yeah, I'm just also really excited and eager to learn about um, the history, your history, and SMC's history. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I too was a psychology major. I double majored in psychology and history, and I've used those two disciplines to do social work. And I've worked in the area of mental health extensively doing wraparound services, case management services. I've done substance abuse. I've done residential substance abuse for pregnant women and their children. I've also worked in the area of reentry. And one thing that has plagued our community, at least, you know, Black and Brown communities, is uh, not adequately addressing mental health issues. There's a stigma about it. We're underserved. Also, there's not enough education, and a lot of the practitioners are culturally incompetent. So I found that being, uh, I've lived in the communities that I've served most of my career, and I can see up close and personal how mental health support makes a difference in individuals. It makes a difference in families. It makes a difference in communities. So, you know, I have a similar sort of perspective. The community, in which I live, gave me a lot, and I like to consider myself as a person who can give something back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for kind of sharing your educational background and your goal as it is. Um, in terms of education, um, our group decided to discuss your early life. So if I can just go ahead and ask the first
Go ahead.
question.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
So the first question we have would be, can you describe your family? What did your parents um, do? Do you have any siblings? And how did your family shape your values and personality?
Okay. So let me deal with that first one in terms of describing my family. and then just remind me, like as I, go along about those other questions. So my family, for the most part, was a matriarchal family with my grandmother being the head of the family. My family roots are in Louisiana. They're in three cities: Donaldsonville, Louisiana, a city called Plaquemines, Louisiana, and also Ponchatoula, Louisiana, which is actually my hometown. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and uh, like from there, and I've also I also have some roots in New Orleans, also in the city of New Orleans, also, and I actually lived and worked there for a long time. So I lost my father when I was 4 to sickle cell anemia. So uh, we 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 all lived in my grandmother's home. My grandmother's home was large enough to accommodate uh, my mother, my mother's sister, me, and my younger brother, who's also an alumnus of St. Mary's. Okay, my brother came to St. Mary's with me from South Central Los Angeles. He earned the president's scholarship. He was in, I don't know if they have it now. There's a program that was called the Integrated or Integral Liberal Arts Program. It was a program where um, uh, 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 it was more um, seminar based. It was more seminar based than the regular 414 program. Okay, so um, by me being 4, losing my father, especially losing my father to sickle cell anemia, I didn't really learn anything about sickle cell anemia until I was in I was in high school. When I was in high school, that is Cathedral High School, Cathedral Catholic Boys High School in Los Angeles. I was there. The Black Panther Party, they did a weekly newspaper. In that newspaper, they did some articles about sickle cell anemia, and their research said that when when Africans were moved from our original motherland, uh, some of our cells, rather than being round, they assumed this sickle shape, and I think the cell, we were protected from malaria. In other words, we had protection from malaria. So once we were relocated, once we were enslaved, we didn't need that protection anymore. So those cells started to, uh, sickles to turn into a sickle shape. So the a significant number of my paternal relatives, sickle cell, that was their demise. They succumbed. They died of sickle cell anemia, because it's like maybe 5 or 6. Like my dad and 2 or 3 of my aunts, died sickle cell anemia. So I really didn't get a chance to know the paternal side of my family that much. You know, a lot of them, once they became adults, they left the Ponchatoula, Louisiana area, and they moved to California. They moved to New York and various places around the country. But I have a uh, good knowledge of my maternal relatives. That is, so we were a close knit family. We were I had a family from which I reaped a lot of strength, a lot of motivation, a lot of inspiration, and these were, you know, a lot of people believe that African American women have been the backbone, the major support system of the African American community. And I personally can provide testimony to that because in terms of developing a a spiritual, cultural, social, economic, and civic enrichment, I got that from my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt. I got that from them. Now, my time in Louisiana, as far as growing up, ended when I was about 9 years old. 9 years old. And racism, integration, apartheid, that's what got me into South Central Los Angeles. That's what got me there. It was my mother was a devout Catholic. She was a devout Catholic, and she wanted me to be educated in Catholic schools. So my family emphasized education. They emphasized not being afraid of racism, not being afraid of white people. They emphasized me being, um, equal, for sure, not better than anybody else, but no less than anybody else. Because during those times, um, and I'm going to ramble a little bit here too, because when I think of psychology, we had a class, ethnic studies class, Black studies class, as you will call, Black psychology, and the the psychics of white people are conditioned to be superior to everybody, and in a lot of cases, the psychics of African Americans are conditioned to feel inferior. So long before people started doing any sort of formal training into the Black psychic, my family and other families also across the country, other families, telling their kids, hey, listen, um, you work hard, and you speak your mind. Don't be afraid. You're no better than anyone else. You're no less than anyone else. So that and it was like, the sky is a limit. The sky is the limit. Don't think that, because you are, we said Negro at that time. Don't think because you're a Negro, you cannot be anything you want to be. So my my grandmother, my mother, and my aunt, they ex- they exposed me to the community by, say, for instance, my grandmother was a Methodist, so she would take me to church with her, and she would allow me to sing in front of the church. For Sunday school, she would allow me to speak, and groom my what I call civic enrichment skills. Okay, we okay, spiritual enrichment. That's let me kind of hit this just a little bit, and don't let me go too long on this. I mean, if you need to move on to something, I mean, that's fine. No offense taken. So spiritual enrichment, they taught me, my family taught me that there's a being outside of myself that's worthy of worship, and I perform certain rituals such as prayer, fasting, because the Catholic Church during those days used to fast on Fridays. We used to go without meat on Fridays. So prayer, fasting, attending church services, be spiritually enriched, be culturally enriched, okay, knowing that, you know, you come from a great people, you come from a proud people. So a lot of my cultural enrichment early on that I received from my family it wasn't so much about Black history. You know, we talked a little bit about Black history because, uh, you know, we talked about the Tuskegee Airmen, you know, which is a pretty well-known uh, contribution right now. We talked about Booker T. Washington. You know, we talked about a lot of these people when I was coming along, and we also talked about our family members, our family members, like those who had, you know, come before us. For example, um, Clarence Williams Sr. was my grandmother's first cousin. Clarence Williams the third, well, Clarence Williams played piano for Louis Armstrong. The great trumpeter Louis Armstrong, my grandmother's first cousin, played piano for him, and his grandson was a renowned actor. I can't think of all the movies, but Clarence Williams III, he was a renowned actor. So he's a part of my family, and you know, so being, you know, spiritually enriched, being culturally enriched, being economically enriched, you know, had to do with them making sure I had a good education. Making sure I had a good education, being civically enriched is not so much that, you know, we're training you to be a leader, but we're training you to, you know how to, uh, you know, conduct yourself in organizations. You know, now another thing is too. See, my grandmother was a Sunday school teacher. My mom taught school. My aunt taught school, and my dad taught school too before he passed. Okay, so in terms of, you know, organizing things, you know, like I watched them organize, you know, things, and also watch them be politically involved as much as they possibly could. We had organizations during those days that were totally African American organizations. Two organizations. One was an organization called the Morris Benevolent Society. This was an organization we had in our little town, to where it was like a group of people who accumulated funds to help people in need. To help people in need. In other words, you would pay your dues, but if somebody experienced a hardship, those dues would be used to help that person out of an hardship. Okay. The other thing was a sort of like a faith-based organization called the Order of Eastern Stars. The Order of Eastern Stars it would be the female counterpart of the Masons. You know, like the Masons, the African American Association of Masons. So in in growing up, you know, like I was just absorbing, I was internalizing how my family was involved in the community. You know, like they were always giving something back, going above and beyond the call of duty. So I've been greatly inspired by them, just in watching them use their spiritual, cultural, social enrichment, their civic enrichment, and also political enrichment. You know, knowing how political systems work. Because, oh wow, we were barely we during those days when I was growing up, between birth and nine, African Americans were still struggling for the right to vote. So people who were working politically right in our little rural town, Ponchatoula is a very rural town. People who were working politically, their houses got bombed. So I'm growing up now, you know, with my family, hear my family to talk about people's houses getting bombed. Okay, and now I did say I was going to ramble a little bit too, because a lot of thoughts hit me right now. So my mom, being a devout Catholic, she wanted me to go to Catholic schools. So there was one Catholic school in our city, and she put me in that school in the first grade. The death threats on our lives. The death threats on our property got so bad, she had to take me out of that. She took me out of that. Okay. And uh, I went to a public school in the first grade. This is when they're talking about integrating the schools. Okay, this is when they're talking about integrating the schools. This is in the late 50s and early 60s. So I was in the first grade in a public school. In the second grade, my mother found an African American, all African American Catholic school 30 miles east of where we lived. She also identified a family that would be willing to house me uh, from Monday through Friday. Then my mother would come and get me on Friday and take me back home. We did that for a year, for the entire second grade. And that was quite an adjustment for me, but I adapted to it. But it speaks to the devoutness of my mother's uh, spirituality and her faith, given that she was determined to make sure I had a Catholic education as recommended, almost mandated by the Catholic Church. So she was working. She worked as a school teacher, and it became too difficult for her to keep going. She'd have to bring me there Sunday evening and then come pick me up on Friday, and that became too difficult. So I went back to public school in the third grade and the fourth grade. So it was around that time they started talking about integrating the schools, and it just became. I mean, it's because I don't know, y'all. Uh, I mean, you have cemeteries in Ponchatoula are separated. You got one black cemetery, you got one white cemetery. During that time, we had a movie theater in town. African Americans sat on the top, white people sat on the bottom. There was a bus, a public service bus with a screen. It wasn't like half the seats were for African Americans and half the seats. It was like 2/3 of the seats were for white people, 1/3 of the seat was for African Americans. So African Americans had to go behind the screen and find a seat. So if all those seats were full, full capacity for all those seats, and there were vacant seats in front of the screen, you would still have to stand. You would still have to stand. And some people would have journeys as long as 20, almost 30 miles, and they would have to stand considering that there was seats vacant, but you couldn't occupy one of those seats. Okay. So thank God for Rosa Parks. Okay. Thank God for Dr. King. Thank God for all those people who struggled and fought for our right to uh, for public accommodations. Okay. Um, when we would travel around Louisiana, or we would travel across the country, because I had an uncle in Los Angeles, so we would travel by car. So either you had to sleep in the car, or you would have to find a mason. Uh, my mom and my grandmother and my aunt had contacts with the Masons. They're a national organization, national African American organization, and then she also had contacts with Eastern Stars. So she would call along the route and say, "Listen, we're going to be, wherever, like in Texas. Can we stay with you? Yeah, honey, come on. You can stay. Show. Yeah, y'all can come. Okay, so that's how we were able to travel and rest and get food, because there was a network of people, African American people, that belong to these Mason organizations, belong to these Eastern Star organizations that helped us with this, because you couldn't stay in any hotel. You couldn't stay in any, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, whatever, Holiday Inns or Best Western, where you couldn't stay anywhere like that. Okay, you could stay. When we would go to a restaurant, if we ate in that restaurant, it would be in the kitchen area. In other words, you see, and that's one thing in terms of, even at that age, even at, I'm telling you, even at like 5 and 6, I knew that did not feel right. In other words, like we get out of the car. Sometimes we would travel on the bus. We get out of the car, which you know, and so I'm thinking, the first time I'm thinking we're going in this dining room where I see all these people, eating. You could see there's, things had, windows everywhere. So I look in there at people eating stuff. And so we walk right past that and we go to the back to a little, I don't know if you all know what telephone booths are, but, we go, and have to eat in the kitchen where the chefs were preparing the food, and you could barely, stand in there, let alone sit down. And so, and I knew that wasn't right. That did not feel right to me even then. So I started to form a commitment to struggle, during those early days. So I had great maternal, great matriarchal inspiration. When I got to LA, I was living with my uncle, and uh, you know, it's just, I mean, he put something, in me, something courageous in me that I still take with me to today. During those times, we had more delineated, more definite roles for men and women. And so, as far as, because it wasn't just about, getting uh, an education, and then too, Alexis, I played a lot of ball. I played a lot of football, basketball, and baseball too. So I had a chance to uh, do that. I mean, he taught me, baseball. He really taught me baseball. That's what he really stressed on, baseball. Okay, but he also taught me how to be a man. Like I said, quote unquote, like back in those days, we had more defined roles in terms of, men. You got to provide, you got to protect, you got to maintain, and then two, you got to give something back. You got to give something back. And it was more families in our communities where we had uh, both parents in the household. So in Ponchatoula, before I left, with the Mars Benevolent Society, with the Order of Eastern Stars, with the community in general. Once I got to Los Angeles, that village, it wasn't just a a localized thing. It was a national thing for African Americans at that time. That village was national. Everybody did what they can to lift us out of those Jim Crow conditions. Okay, fast foods. So there was a bunch of fast food places in my area. Those fast food places had one window for African Americans and one window for white people. Drinking fountains, public drinking fountains. If they had to be designated. Okay, if you saw it was only one drinking fountain, you couldn't drink from that. You had to have one that said they had this colored over that. They put colored over the drinking fountain. Parking your car in Ponchatoula on the main street in Ponchatoula. African American, in my lifetime, African Americans could not park their cars on the main street. You'd have to park your car on a side street. Okay, and I mean, and two, lynchings were still taking place then. Lynchings were still taking place. Okay, so you had to be, concerned about that. Like, at what times was it safe for you to be out in the community? And uh, when people who organized, because like I said, we have some people who were organized in our community, they had to have 24-hour protection around their homes. Okay, so I had great family, I had great nourishing, I had great nurturing. My dad taught school, for as long as he lived. my mother taught school, and school teachers made up the bulk of the lower middle class in the African American community throughout Louisiana, especially when we had all African American schools. Okay, because you didn't really have a lot of choices for African Americans. You couldn't really do too much. You couldn't. Of course, Louisiana is known for three or four historically black colleges and universities. With Grambling, my aunt went to Grambling University. My mother went to Southern University, and then in New Orleans, you have Xavier University in New Orleans, and you have the Southern University in New Orleans. So you have like four. No, you have Dillard University in New Orleans too. So Louisiana is known for five HBCUs, and that's where my mother and my aunt got their undergrad degrees in education, and then later on got credentials and license to teach school. But they started off in an entire African American school system where you got hand me downs in terms of books. And you pick up a book and you see where this book was in one of the white schools, before you got the book. So it was a lot of hand me down, a lot of you know uh, second class treatment in terms of educational opportunities. Okay, so let me just say a couple of things about the men in my family. My uncle, all the men in my family, as soon as the men in my family were involved with me from the beginning. From the beginning, it didn't matter. It was like, when I was born, when my mother was born, they came from all corners of the country to celebrate our birth. And they came with gifts, they came with support, and they were always in my life. So there are people outside of my family who influence me, but the major influences, matriarchal and patriarchal influences, came from inside of my family. My uncle took me and my younger brother. I was around 9, my brother was around 7. He had finished a career as a brick mason. He was years old, and he raised us until we finished school, until we finished St. Mary's. So here he is. He's 60 years old now, but he was fit enough. He was mentally capable enough and had the energy enough to give us a good nourishing and nurturing. He exposed us to a lot of things. He exposed us to. We went to all those amusement parks, Disney World, Marineland. There was one Marineland. You guys don't know about that one, but Marineland, Knott's Berry Farm. We went to Catalina Island. He took us everywhere he could take us and exposed us. And that was his way also of educating us. Education in essence is exposure. And so, when you get exposed to things, you learn things, and he made it a point. Okay, South Central LA, when I was growing up in South Central LA, y'all, my uncle protected me from a lot of those negative things that were going on in the community. He had a street name named Curly, and by him, I guess being a brick mason and stuff like that, he was in pretty good shape, and he was known for knocking people out. Okay, so and LA was heavily South Central LA, East LA, Compton, Watts, heavily populated by gangbangers. No, almost every other person, but he got that respect, and he garnered that respect for us too. Now we had I've had my beefs with people and things like that, but you know um he gave us the best of upbringing. So my mother and my aunt and my grandmother, they would come and visit us for holidays and for summers. And as I was saying, they didn't just want to interact with us. My friends were able to go along and experience some of the things that we experienced also. My godfather, um, and by the way, everybody in my family was a veteran of a war. My great grandfathers, well, at least my maternal grandfather, he was World War One, My uncle my uncle and my godfather. They were World War II. My dad's brothers. My dad had two brothers. They were Navy veterans in Korea. As a matter of fact, my dad was stationed in Oakland. He was stationed. I lost my mom a few years ago, and I was going through some of my mom's stuff, and I found discharge papers uh, for my dad just a couple of years ago. He served in Oakland, and by me living in the Bay Area for 6 years, I didn't even know that. I didn't know anything like that. But the men in my family, the patriarchal side of my family, they stepped right up. Okay, they were always in my life. They continue to be in my life and give me their support. They did everything they could to fill that void. And I had a wonderful, and in the South Central Los Angeles, we lived in two duplex homes. The first one, we had a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. And in that living room, we had a Murphy bed. We had a wall bed. Okay, so my brother and I, we uh, used that bed. And my uncle, he had a cot, what we call like a folding thing. He slept on that in the kitchen. So we moved from there more towards what they call the east side, not East Los Angeles, but it was like the east side of South Central Los Angeles. And we had a duplex home over there. We had a kitchen, we had a bedroom, and a living room, and a bathroom. So we slept in the bed, my brother and I, through elementary and high school, through elementary and high school. And my uncle, he slept on the couch, you know. But it wasn't the feeling that we were impoverished. We didn't, it wasn't like it was like we had a rich upbringing. And I thank God, and I thank them, and I thank Natalia and Alexa too for allowing me to share this because really, I never talked about this way. I never really spoke to anybody about anything like this. And to kind of like fast forward a bit, I don't remember Herman and I talking about actions after we did those actions. I don't, because we did a few things, but it was never, something, about which we conversed about. And sometimes I think of it. I mean, y'all may think it's strange, and it may be, I don't know, but I never really talked about this part of my life before. I never really talked too much about what happened in St. Mary's in terms of activism. Never really talk. I mean, we. I know I didn't do it. I can speak for Herman too. We didn't do it so we can talk about it, and I'm gonna even go one further than that. We didn't even do it so we could remember it. So a lot of things I'm not going to remember because I wasn't trying to remember, but I was trying to do them at the time. I was trying to do them, and you know, we cared. We wanted to get our education, but we always felt like if worse came to worse and we got expelled, we did make a commitment to go somewhere else and get an education because we know that's what our families want. Our families stress that, you know. And I said this before too. Um, they gave me an assignment. Okay. Now, and my brother also. Okay. So when I say I got an assignment for my ancestors, struggle until you're free. Struggle until you are free. Try not to pass this along to your children. Try not to pass this along to your grandchildren. And those are lessons that I actually, literally got. And sometimes they come up and, sometimes like when my grandmother used to come and visit me in LA, we'd be walking from church. Then she started teaching me, she started, because it's like, listen, 43rd to 43rd, we lived on 43rd in Los Angeles in South Central LA between Broadway and Main. And our church was on 47th and Main. So for every street in LA, there's a place. You got a street, 43rd Street, 43rd place. So it was about like a 10 block thing, long, city block we walked. And she used some of that time going to church and coming back from church to tell me, different things, tell me things about our ancestors, and she tell me, hey, listen, don't be afraid of anything. Don't be afraid of white people. You know, don't think you can't, there's something try it, at least give it a try. You're not going to be able to do everything, but you can do some things and you can be whatever you want to be. Okay. And there was no pressure. These are just lessons we got from our family so we wouldn't succumb to the racist ideology of that, you are predestined to be a second class citizen. You are naturally, innately inferior. My family, both sides, the men and the women taught against that. And it wasn't like a browbeating sort of thing. It was more of an opportunistic sort of thing. Okay, well, like this is a sensitive time. I got it. I could tell, like, look, I need you to listen to something, And so I got those lessons. I got that oral, that oral history in terms of knowing about my family members, knowing about times in which they came up, all that figured into my pursuit of Black studies. Okay, not just me studying on my own, but making that available in institutions, making that available at St. Mary's. Okay, even at my high school, I was one of the people. We had a Catholic high school, Cathedral High School in Los Angeles, one of the most oldest schools, uh, renowned schools. Did I lose you? Did I lose somebody? Natalia? Did I
I'm
lose
sorry.
you?
I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay. Well, go ahead, go ahead. If you want to, now listen. If you want to go on and use that screen, that's fine. I just didn't want to lose anybody
No worries.
with audio. So it was. I mean, the part of the inspiration for ethnic studies, for having a strong Black Students Union, that was rooted in my upbringing. That was rooted in my upbringing and the tutelage and the nurturing that I got from my family. When I was in high school, we started a Black Students Union in high school. We were like the first Catholic school. We were probably the only Catholic school between 1965 and 1969 with a Black Students Union. We went to a predominantly Chicano indigenous people high school, which they had an organization called United Mexican American Students, and we had relationships with people we had relationships with the Brown Berets. There were a Chicano liberationist organization. They would come to school and give us talks. We had people, I had acquaintances who were Black Panthers. We had two Black Panthers attending St. Mary's at the time. Okay. So listen, let me stop there and let you all get on to some more questions. Okay. And listen, just feel free if you want to stop me and ask me something, if you want to just stop me, that's okay. I mean, that's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing so far. Um, I think we'll move on to another question. If anyone else wants to ask one, feel free.
I was kind of interested in like the work you do now and like how your upbringing played a role into like the job. I know I believe professor said, are you a social worker?
Yeah. Well,
Everything
uh,
you
yeah. I've used my degree in psychology
Mm.
and history to do social work. So right now, I'm working on something y'all may be able to give me feedback on.
Mm.
Okay. So, and I community tested this before I did it. I'm working in the area of community-based violence intervention and prevention. There's a lot of literature online about community-based violence intervention and prevention. So it involves a strategy called a credible messenger strategy. It's an evidence-based strategy that's been used very successfully in Black and Brown communities to reduce crime, to reduce violence. It means that a trusted person, a trusted source delivers a message of violence reduction in the community. So I'm doing a contest right now for middle school and high school students to invite them to use their artistic talents, whether they be spoken word, whether it be rap, whether it be some sort of writing, if they want to do, a piece of art, a dance, whatever. But I want the message to be free of using the N word, no misogyny, no kind of gang signs, throwing up no gang signs or nothing like that. Okay, y'all create this credible message. So once they create this credible message, they send it in to me, and I have a council of young people, a youth advisory council. They're going to do the judging to select the top 3 middle school students with the best credible messages and the top 3 high school students with the best credible messages. And I have 6 Amazon gift cards, $100 gift cards for them. But and I want to get you all's opinion on this too. Uh, I community test before I did it. I community tested, and I didn't just test it in Louisiana. I tested because I've worked in New York, I've worked in California. I mean, I've worked a lot of different places. So I called around. I got people from my local community. I said, "Hey, man, listen. Do you think that um, music or art forms, spoken word stuff, can that be done without using the N word, without demeaning things about women, without glorifying gangster life? Do you think something like that could be done?" Everybody to the person. I talk with people who work with people who were in juvenile hall, who were supervising people, people who go out and do motivational speaking to young people. I talk with young people themselves. Okay. And they're telling me, yeah, brother Musheer, like we can, that's good. You can do that. Okay. That's what they said. Okay. So I'm in the process now of just getting it launched. And thus far, the response is coming back kind of slow, but I'm gonna work it. I'm gonna work it because y'all know what the goal is to reduce violence. So when I talk to experts, when I talk to the PhD in sociology, psychology, and this is what they, hey, Musheer, like it's not the music that's driving the violence. When I talk to the experts, when I talk to people in the community, which who I consider to be experts too, they just don't have the initials behind their names. They say, Brother Musheer, yeah, that music is driving us into all. That has a lot to do with that. Okay. So I don't know what can be video games, songs, television shows, some podcasts are not popular unless they glorify violence, they glorify misogyny, they glorify some sort of gang behavior. They're not popular. I mean, and then too, our subcultures or our micro groups are only a reflection of the macro group. And if somebody were to beam up 50,000 feet and look down at American culture and then look at how we indulge ourselves in culture, what are you going to see? You're going to see sex, you're going to see violence, you're going to see drugs. I don't care if it's a soap opera, I don't care if it's a prime time television show, you know, and we talked about the video games. I said, it's those are the 3 things which are at the core. I mean, there's other things too. There's a lot of positive things going on, but these things are, consuming a lot of our time and a lot of our energies. Okay, so I would like to see our community start to nurture and nourish a different sort of course, a different sort of attitude. I mean, just because somebody bumps into me or steps on my shoes, I don't have to shoot that person. I can walk away from that. So this is the dynamic in the community right now, is that people are more inclined to smoke people. People are more inclined to get physical with people just for the simplest little things. So I think like if we can kind of like drive a new narrative, I mean, I can't save the world, but I can save some people. So I think it's time to drive a new narrative now. So that's what I'm trying to do with this best credible message contest. So Maya, let me ask you first. Do you think that we can, I'm just be honest with you now, do you think that we can create, I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight to where we can change our community overnight, but how do you feel about creating messages of violence reduction? Just how do you feel about this generally speaking? No pressure now, no pressure.
I think it's important just because, like you're seeing, a lot of the music that, especially like Black youth consume, does like perpetuate violence a lot, and people argue that like it doesn't really matter as much, but I do think it does impact the kids because they don't realize that the rappers are just rapping and they don't live that life outside of it, but the kids believe it to be true, so they try to like emulate that image. So I do think
Mhm.
pushing is really good, especially for the youth now, as we have like more and more of like what you're saying, media being pushed that does push like violence or just negative stereotypes about the Black community.
Right. And of course, me being in the dirty South, the land of uh, Master P, No Limit Records, Lil Wayne, Juvenile, Mystical. I was doing a reentry program, and I had one of Mystical's had his brother-in-law. Well, he was going with uh, my guy's sister. So when he came with his music, the community was saying, he's not like that. That boy is not like that. That's just a pretense. You see, so we know that. But when that hits the airwaves in Cali or New York, they're thinking, hey, look, that's a real thing. So to a great extent, we are a reflection of the media. The media doesn't so much reflect, they reflect the negative stuff in us, you know, because as far as news goes, if it bleeds, it leads. Okay. The positive things you and Alexis and Natalia do, that's not that's not news. That's just stuff people don't want to know about. They don't want to hear about that stuff. But if people are getting mowed down, then you have people on the side who are filming that. Okay. Then the people who are doing all that stuff like that, what do? They go and kill themselves. And where are these things taking place? Where are these things they're taking place in schools. They're taking place in schools. You have to, I mean, it shouldn't be taking place anywhere. It's bad enough to be taking place in the streets, but it's taking place in schools. Okay. So so thanks for that. Thanks for that, Mike. Thanks. Okay, who's next? Who's next? No pressure now. If y'all don't want to respond, that's fine. That's fine. I'll go and say some more stuff about my career and what I've been doing. But yes, I've used psychology and history to do social work, and I've done extensive social work, like with all populations, mental health populations, autism, reentry, um, at-risk youth. One of the things I'm most proud of is that at one time, I managed 3 residential treatment facilities in the greater New Orleans area for pregnant women and their children. Each facility could accommodate 10 women and their children. And I thought it important at the time to get, because these women were basically, not married, single women, but those kids have fathers. So I developed a male involvement program where the men who wanted to have relationships with their children, maybe not with their children's mothers. I got the the women to agree to this. They would come in and they would interact with their children. Okay, so you know uh, those sorts of situations, because I mean, we don't have that family unit anymore the way we used to. it was beginning to disappear in my preteens. It was beginning to disappear then, because when the welfare stuff came and the welfare workers would come into the communities, if men were around, then women wouldn't be able to get the support that they needed. So men had to become, either out of the home or not, and stuff like that. That so and then too, all that war on poverty stuff, the Vietnam War, taking men going to the criminal justice system, taking men out of the community. So those are more legitimate causatic factors than I would say we're not good fathers. Okay, we're not good fathers. Okay, so now and then too, in order for me to talk fatherhood, Maya, Alexis, and Natalia, I had to be a good one myself. Okay, so my first, I have two daughters. So my first one, I was okay. I could have been a lot better, but with that second one, I tried to perfect it. But I let them know I love them both equally. You see, so now I couldn't be, around here encouraging people, to be, good fathers unless I was one myself. So, thank God, people do see me, and that gives me a sense of pride, a sense of healthy type pride, not a sense of arrogant type, but a sense of healthy type pride. Hey, look, okay, I can talk to you about being a good father, because I was one. I was trying to be one. So okay, those reentry programs that I do, I'm also proud of those too. Okay, I'm very proud of those people who've been incarcerated. A lot of people driven into the criminal justice system because of social and economic sorts of situations. They want to put food on their tables, clothes on their backs, pay their rent, pay mortgage, and the opportunities, especially in Louisiana, are not that diverse. You see, they're not that diverse. So I'm not saying like, hey, look, you need to go out here and do all this criminal stuff. No, I mean, you don't need to, but people get caught up in that, and the system has a way of channeling people, of avenuing people into those sorts of things. Okay, if you can't find a job, okay, if you're in an educational system who considers you to be a second class system, and let me say this too, this is controversial too. A lot of these educational systems could be a lot better if the people in the classrooms would accept the responsibility to deal with people in a way they could survive. Okay. Some of the attitudes of some of the classroom people, administrators, stuff like that. Okay, well, look, I got mine. Now you got to get yours. If you I'm if you can't get it, I'm not going. It's just there for a paycheck. Now I'm not indicting everybody, okay, but I am really happy. I've been blessed to work with that reentry community and see some changes in that too. Um, when I first started, computer literacy was a big thing when I first started back in the day. So we had computer literacy, we had addictions counseling, for them, you know, and we did a lot of groups. We did a lot of groups. Job development, also that's important. And in Louisiana, we have an offshore industry. So the 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 good thing about it is that we had a job developer that was really great at getting people jobs offshore. So if you come home from the joint, you don't really have to stay around your hood, around your neighborhood. You can go offshore, stay offshore 2 weeks a month, and when you come home, you got that big money, just like like when you're out here making that big dope money. Now you got that big money again. But you just have to be strengthened because people are going to try to get you in those games. They're going to try to get you in their life. You just got to be strong. So like the more we can secure you economically, when we talk about justice, there's not going to be any social justice without economic justice. Okay, so we try to provide that too. So that's what my career has basically been. Working and Herman and I dedicated ourselves to this when we were in school. Okay, we knew what we, as I said, our ancestors gave us an assignment. That assignment is struggle until you are free. Do not turn your back on the battlefield. Do not pass this along to your children and grandchildren. So with great honor, with great honor, like we have labored in our various, Herman as a teacher, I think Herman worked 34 years. Herman was teacher of the year in the Oakland public school system. And then a few years ago, before he retired, Herman was national teacher of the year. Herman got honored at a Warriors basketball game during halftime. They honored Herman there. So, yes. So we knew what we were, we knew what we were doing. I mean, and we're happy, we're satisfied. Okay. I mean, we may not be rich, but we're comfortable. We're comfortable. You know, I may even be comfortable enough to come and visit you all, before this is all over and stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of like generally like what I've done with my degree in psychology, degree in history. I earned a double major. Okay. And let me just say this right quick too. Um, Psychology can help me to be analytical, in some cases predictable when it comes to behavior. Okay. History tunes me in to, okay, this is what was going on at this particular time. This is what was going on at Jim Crow. What was the psychology here in our community to help us to overcome that? Okay. This is what's going on right now, in Black and brown communities. We become the number one killers of ourselves. That's where we are at this point in history right now. So what's psychologically, like what's driving this dynamic? You see, so I can kind of use those two disciplines to help me to be a better servant, because that's all I am. I'm just a servant. That's all I am. So if y'all want to comment on that, Alexis and uh, Natalie, if you want to comment on that best credible message contest, go ahead. What do you think about that? What do you think? I mean, can people create messages with I mean, with some a certain sense of respect, no vulgarity, not glorifying, any, gangster life. Can people, how y'all feel about that? And just be honest. If you say, well, like, Musheer, you wasting your time, that's because I've been, kind of like told that too, but that's okay. So what do y'all think about that? Can y'all hear me okay? Can you hear me? Maya, you can hear me, huh? Okay.
I guess I can take this one on if that's okay, Natalia.
Alexis, you want to comment on that?
Oh yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry about
Oh yeah, I
I
forgot about your throat. I'm sorry. Yeah.
oh it's okay.
Just
I
keep,
guess
just make it just make it quick. Just make it. I mean,
yeah.
because I don't want you to, yeah, because you need your voice.
That do need my voice. I'll be quick, but yeah, I also kind of agree. Well, I agree as well. Like I feel like a lot of times the reason why that kind of music does get like out and gets really popular is just because it's exploitative. I've noticed, and it kind of it's like destroying the Black community or even Latin community or even Asian community like within itself. And because that's that's what's making the big bucks, people are gonna follow that. Like I recently watched a rap documentary with the whole like Kendrick Lamar and Drake situation, and they were kind of talking about like how for the longest time, gangster rap kind of became this new thing, even though of course like people like Kanye were a little bit different and kind of were more like theological, which is more like Kendrick style, and Drake would kind of imitate like this gangster kind of style, to be able to make hits and make money. So I think that it's the system in itself, like with the music industry, that really kind of pushes that sense of like, oh yeah, you need to be as black as humanly possible, like so like well, being gangster isn't black at all, but you know what I mean,
I
like the
feel you. I feel you. I feel you. I feel you.
yeah, because at one point gangs were meant to protect each other. Like I know, like the Crips and Bloods, like they were a community of people. It was like I can't remember the exact words, but of the meaning, but I know during segregation and during like the Black Panther Party movement, those gangs were created to look out for their communities, and now it's being put on ourselves. How? I don't know, but I think just that whole aspect of like the industry destroying the community within inside itself because they're able to manipulate that. Like, I feel like a lot of things would be different if it wasn't for that switch in ideals and what is like popularized, what is not.
Thanks, Alexis. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and kind of a follow-up question I had to kind of go off of what Maya and
Go
Alexis
ahead.
said,
Go ahead.
was that you mentioned creating a new narrative for children, and I was
Yeah.
wondering how different or similar this curriculum is to the way you were taught in middle school growing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was in Louisiana, the narrative was we have to work together. You know, the whole idea of we should overcome what? Racism. How do we do that? We work together. You know, we create our own support system. You know, not just locally, but I mentioned about how we would travel to, around the country, and we'd have people in various communities that would help us with food, with lodging, with accommodations. So the message was unity. The message was, you know, African American unity, Black unity. That was a message. Stick together, and you know, we need to get some political power. So the whole idea of voting, the whole idea of education, the whole idea of being able to utilize some of the same avenues to success other people, that was a collective effort. You know, we have to work together. Like if you're a student, you know, in college, you know, if you are a worker, you know, you organize. You organize, you know, like in unions and community-based organizations, and you know, the churches were, you know, were a focal point for organizing. You know, that's where uh, some of the great leadership came. That's where Dr. King came from. Malcolm wasn't a Christian, but he came from a Muslim mosque. You know, so some of the greatest leaders came from faith-based communities. So you know, the message was, you know, also um, spiritual enrichment. You know, spiritual. I mean, you know, you're not going to get through this just of, you know, things that these earthly things. I mean, we need, you know, our Creator to help us with these things. You know, be proud of your heritage. You have nothing of which you need to feel ashamed about. Okay, so and give something back. You know, give something back. Always give something back. So now that was a message. You know, it was a village. You know, it takes a village, you know, to raise children. Now children are not being raised by the village. They're not being raised by the neighborhood. They're being raised by the hood in a persona of a pimp or a drug slinger or, you know, whoever it may be. You see, that's the kind of thing right now. Like, you know, these are the okay, like the last time I asked uh my kids, I asked about 10 of them what they wanted to be. Now this is not having worked with this last group a lot. 10 of them what they wanted to be. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you, Natalia. You know, what do you think out of 10? Where do you think their ambitions lie? What do you think when I ask them what I ask them each, you know, what do you want to be about 10? You know, what do you want to be? What do you think they gave? What answers do you think they gave me in terms of what they want to be? No pressure now. No pressure.
I'm not sure, but I mean, at least when I was growing up, the answers were like, oh, firefighter, doctor, astronaut, things like that.
I
I'm not sure
wish.
about now.
I wish. Rappers and athletes. Okay. Half wanted to be rappers, about approximately, and half wanted to be athletes. Okay. You see, so it is imperative that we bring back those aspirations, those visions that, you know, you don't have to just limit yourself to two or three things. Okay. Now, when I was, like I said, in my preteen years, Jim Crow South, we didn't have that many choices. And you all know the history. A lot of us were, you know, we worked on trains on you know, Amtrak train, whatever it was, Union Pacific, whatever train. What were we doing there? We were Pullman porters, right? Okay, so a lot of us were Pullman porters. A lot of us worked at airports as what? Sky caps, right? Train stations. Okay. Now I'm kind of like focusing on uh like the what the 50s. So I was born in 52, like from the 50s and like the early 60s. Okay. Um Working in school systems, school African American schools. So you taught school, you worked in the school cafeteria, you worked as you worked in maintenance, or you worked as a teacher. You worked as a teacher. All right. I mean, in Louisiana and Southeast in Louisiana, so you didn't have too many choices. Okay. So as we started to acquire civil rights, y'all, then and we started to get education, and we started to ask for equal opportunity employment, then we had more diverse choices. Then now we can talk about, and we had black medical schools also, to where it's like um, my doctors, my first doctor in Ponchatoula, he was white. You go into his office, you have one waiting room for African Americans, one waiting room for black people. Okay, and it was when I got to Los Angeles, had an African American doctor, because you have Howard. I think I know Meharry has there are like a few African American medical schools around the country, to which those physicians like come in and work in our communities. Some attorneys, think about the famous Thurgood Marshall, NAACP attorney. So some of us were able to do that. But it isn't like now, to where it's like we have all these choices, okay? But when you come down into the communities, you're dealing with communities that have been marginalized. People are limited themselves. Their visions are limited. Either I want to be a ball player, basketball player, football player, baseball player. I want to be a rapper. Okay, those things are limited now. They don't see a lot of the firefighters and other, so they don't see anything like that. They don't even see anything beyond the hip hop industry, but the rap. I say, hey man, listen, there's engineers in that. There's what do you call those? There's technical aspects of hip hop. Every rapper needs a support system. Okay, so even you can be an accountant, for a rapper. You could be an attorney for. I mean, you don't just have to be, think about the rap thing. Think about who supports the rapper, who supports the athletes. I mean, these athletes need lawyers, they need accountants, they need they need all that, but they're not thinking about it, at least where I'm coming from. Okay, now Cali, that's a different situation there. Okay, I'm not, I don't know, but where I'm coming from, that's all they want. That's all they think about. You know, so we were more collective minded. We all committed to struggle. We weren't afraid to vote. We weren't afraid to march. We had this unity, this feeling of unity. Hey, look, like, you know, this is what we need to do to make life better, for the Musheers that's coming along, for Musheer's grandkids, for the Natalias, for the Alexis, for the Mayas. This is what we need to do. So that was the difference in the message. That was the difference in the message. Okay. We weren't the number one killers of ourselves. Okay. And that seems to be not the totality of the message now, but that seems to be a great part of the message right now. Okay, because our enemy were white supremacists. Our enemies were racist individuals. Our enemies were vigilante groups who had formed for lynchings, for church bombings, for home bombings. You see, we were concerned about how do we defeat this situation. Okay, and for the most part, it was a nonviolent, peaceful resistance effort. Okay. Now, as I said, you had people come along, in the 60s Black Panther Party who, uh, you know, for the most part, I'm not saying where the Black Panther Party were really aggressive. And I grew up in communities, Black Panther, I grew up in those communities with Black Panther Party in Los Angeles. And then when I got to the Bay Area, one of my friends, two of my friends were Panthers. Okay, two of my friends were Panthers, so I never seen them really do anything. It was self defense, and that's what Malcolm was talking about too, self defense. As opposed to, hey, look, we got to go out here. and we got to be, physically aggressive. No, it was. It was like, hey, look, defend yourself. Okay, defend yourself. So the message now is, you know, if you got this color and someone else has another color, then y'all enemies. Okay, y'all enemies. Okay, we do have messages of people who are trying to aspire to, like, y'all. I was glad to see all of y'all are socially conscious. Okay, I mean, I gave a cursory glance to your bios, and I could see all of y'all, because Alexa was saying like she was involved in a protest, and like y'all are socially conscious, and that's what we need. See, that's what we need. I mean, uh, there's going to be a big there's going to be a big old thing because Donald Trump has reestablished that Jim Crow order, exclusion of DEI, exclusion of African American history, taking the immunity away from, I mean, giving the police totally immunity, releasing those January 6th people. That's his vigilante group. He tried to get the military to do it, but they wouldn't do it. He tried to get the police to do it. Most of the leadership didn't want to do it. So, as during the George Floyd era, he created his own Gestapo, like Hitler, like secret people, the guys with the baseball caps and the vest that were standing outside there, outside of the White House or in the DC. They didn't even have any names. That was his Gestapo. Like, so now he has these Proud Boys, the Promise Keepers, and somebody else. I can't think of all those different groups. But he said, stand back and stand down, or stand down and stand, something like that. In other words, so he's he's activated them right now. He's mobile. He's let them out of prison. Okay, so they are loyal. Okay, to his intent to destruct. Okay, any semblance of any kind of social and economic justice. Okay, you see, so I mean, but Herman and I are still on the battlefield. I mean, you're not just left alone, but you prepare yourselves by doing what you're doing right now. Okay, finish your undergraduate courses. If you want to go beyond that, go beyond that. And if you can, whatever time you can spend it, because some, I think, Natalia, you talked about spending your total time in the community. So, and as I said, I gave you guys bios cursory glance. So I'm not, saying like Alexis and Maya, you aren't. Okay, but whatever time you can use for social enrichment, whatever time you can give something back, if it's once a week, give something back, because that's going to make a difference. Because we're headed in that same Jim Crow direction where you have elected leadership who espouse white supremacist philosophies, and they give their white supremacist constituents the permission to uh, oppress, suppress, attack, kill, and maim us, and they can get away with it. They can get away with it. That's the history of the Jim Crow South right there. Okay, and that's from whence I came. I came from that, seeing that. So I know what that looks like. So I'm telling y'all, that's what we're in right now. That's what we're in right now. Okay. All right. Did that answer your question? Okay. All right.
Yeah. It, sorry, go ahead, Alexis.
No, that's it. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up question for
Go
that,
ahead.
you mentioned growing up in the Jim Crow South. So what would you say were some of the biggest cultural or social adjustments you had to make
Hmm.
in order to be here and after moving?
Hmm. Okay. Well, um, that's an easy question. Just generally speaking, I didn't have to make any. In other words, well, I mean, if I wanted to go to a movie theater, I didn't have to worry about if all the seats were taken uh, on the second floor, me not being able to to get into the theater. I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about going to a fast food place and either going to the back to a window that was specifically for African Americans. I didn't have to worry about uh, if it was a public drinking fountain somewhere. I didn't have to worry about it not being designated for as a cause quote unquote colored people. I didn't have to worry about anything like that. I didn't have to worry about racism. I didn't have to worry about uh, sitting in church and wondering if somebody's going to come here and blow up the church. I didn't have to worry about. It was an easy adjustment, Natalia. It was easy. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it was something um, to which I can feel. See, even as a kid, I told you, even as a kid, I knew that Jim Crow stuff wasn't right. It just wasn't right. You see, white people doing something, and then we can't do it. Whatever it is, there's even separate cemeteries still in Ponchatoula to this day. There's still one cemetery for African Americans and one cemetery for white. I mean, you can't even die alone. You can't be buried alongside of white people. So that was an easy adjustment. I mean, it really wasn't any. I mean, because before I lived there, I had traveled. I went to kindergarten in South Central Los Angeles, and then of course, I went back. Went to that Catholic school and stuff and all that. But it was easy. Being able to go to amusement parks. You couldn't even go to an amusement park anywhere. Like African Americans we had separate beaches, we had separate amusement parks. Everything was separate. Okay, so it was really an easy adjustment. I just was I was able to get Los Angeles has always been a universal community, so I got exposed to diversity. I got exposed to diversity, and it was a real welcome, therapeutic sort of thing. Really, really, yeah, really, yeah. So that was easy. That was easy right there. Yeah, and I think that enhanced at an early age um, my ability to start thinking more optimistically about our struggle against racism. Okay, because in my research and my studies, LA didn't used to be so user friendly for people of color either. When you think about the Zoot Suit riots, okay, when you think about some of the areas of police, some of the police brutality. Of course, now it's been better, but someone had to make LA user friendly for people of color. There was a struggle there for that too. And for the most part, it's a successful struggle. Okay. So it gave me hope. Hey, look, things can be better. Things can be better. You may have to work, but that's okay. Because you were born for this. So yeah, it gave me, when I got to LA, that gave me that I could relax more. That gave me hope. That took some of that racial pressure, that racial tension. The stuff. You can go out, and not have to worry about, oh well, it's too late for me to be out. So it was a relief. Getting to LA was a relief. That was a relief. I didn't have to make any really adjustments, anything like that. Yeah.
That's really cool. I'm gonna stop talking because it's starting to hurt. But I had a quick question, and I want to ask. Basically, our professor he told us how history rhymes, and instead of like it doesn't really repeat itself, but it rhymes in different ways. So based on like your early life and today, like do you see that like rhyming? Like I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like do you see that kind of rhythm pattern with how things are today versus like in your past life?
Yeah, yeah. I can. That's an excellent question. Thanks for the question, Alexis. I can definitely see that. There are a lot of okay, so we study the leadership of George Wallace. George Wallace was governor of Alabama. Okay, we study his leadership. Okay. Dr. King used to talk a lot about Bull Connors. He was a sheriff in Alabama. So if we study their leadership, we see that they espouse racist beliefs. If you study the leadership of Donald Trump, you can see that he espouses racist beliefs. The whole idea of so when they were getting ready to well, George Wallace used to have this statement, segregation. What he said, segregation then, segregation now, segregation forever. It's George Wallace. Now y'all could know whenever in your leisure y'all can look at it, he used to have that statement. Okay, so Donald Trump is rhyming with that sort of regime philosophy. Then he's rhyming with Hitler's sort of regime philosophy, because a lot of the things he says comes right out of that fascist Nazi playbook. When he says "Make America Great Again," that kind of stuff right there. Like he's saying, okay, well, so what do you mean by "Make America Great"? So is America going to be greater because we don't have DEI? Is America going to be greater because we don't have critical race theory? Is America going to be better because we don't have African American history? So that's what he's telling us. He says he doesn't want that. And at the same time, he's saying, make America great again. So that's what he considers as a great America. No DEI, no African American history, nothing that has to do with any kind of social and economic justice. Okay. Now let's dial back to COVID. We were in the pandemic situation. He was calling COVID the Asian flu or something like that, a Chinese flu. Okay, so this caused the infliction of violence on Asian Americans on a national basis. He started his campaign off, Alexis, by saying that Mexicans are criminals and robbers and thieves, and he's still trying to demonize Mexicans and people from Central America. So the Jim Crow South demonized African Americans. They gave, and y'all know this from history, okay? They gave white supremacists and white racists legal permission to bomb churches, uh, hang, lynch African Americans, and to exact, social and economic justices without any. They had total immunity. So we see that same thing rhyming the way we see right now. You got a leadership that's espousing white supremacy. You got a leadership that's giving the law enforcement people totally immunity to do whatever they want to do, and then you have an organized vigilante force. Okay. Now, what was a vigilante force in the Jim Crow era? Alexa, I'm asking you, what was that? What was that vigilante force? And you know what that was? The vigilante force in the Jim Crow era was what?
Wasn't it like the KKK?
The KKK. My girl. Fist bump, fist bump, fist bump, fist
Yeah.
bump. My girl, the KKK. Okay, so you got that, and you still have them around. They haven't gone anywhere. You still got them around. Okay, now he's also utilizing the when he was going to court in New York for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll. Guess who his, well, you're not gonna know this, but his security was Hell's Angels. Okay, they provided security for him when he was doing the piece for sexually assaulting E. Jean Carroll. Okay, so we have like all those similarities. We have all those rhymes. We have all those parallels. We have a fascist Nazi parallel. Elon Musk. Now, as I understand it, okay, as I understand it, he may be autistic. Sometimes, based on what I know about autistic personalities, he looks like it sometimes. But okay, he's a fairly intelligent guy. So when he gives the Sikh Heil salute at a Republican service, he's trying to make that seem like, oh, that was just a goodbye. But he is actually involved with right wing fascist sort of groups in Europe. Okay, he's from South Africa, so they're making an attempt right now to expel the Haitians, expel the Central Americans, and they're letting in the South Africans now. Because that's all part of that white supremacist sort of regime. You see, so this regime has fascist dynamics. It has white supremacist dynamics. It has Jim Crow dynamics, as similar to what we experienced during that fascist regime in World War II, and what we experienced during the Jim Crow era. So yes, yes, it looks just the same. It looks just the same. One more thing: voting. Voting used to be protected, and I told you. I mean, one of these days, maybe before you all graduate or whatever, I got to come out there. Maybe we'll sit for lunch because I want to talk to you guys about just about voting and a couple of things too. Voting used to be protected by the Supreme Court. Voting is no longer protected by the Supreme Court. States can make up their own rules and regulations with regards to voting, okay, which is a constitutional right. Okay, that constitutional right is no longer protected by the Supreme Court. That's why we took it to the Supreme Court in the first place, because we weren't getting the protection on the state level. Okay, now that's been the Supreme Court has ruled, that's thrown back into the states. Okay, so just as the rulers of those white supremacist regimes in Jim Crow era, had legal protection, had judicial protection, Donald Trump has been given judicial protection also. Donald, you can do anything you want to do. We got your back. We giving you blanket immunity. Just do whatever you want to do. George Wallace had that same type of immunity. Bill Connors had that same type of immunity. Also, there was another governor too, Governor Faubus, Faubus, I think. I think he was the same type of philosophy. Same type of philosophy. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, Michael was right. This is rhyming. It's almost congruent, to those days. Yeah. Did it
Thank you
answer
for
your
that.
question?
Yeah, thank
Did
you
it
for
answer your
that.
question? No. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I want to make sure I answer y'all questions. Yeah. Okay.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
that was perfect.
You did good with that Ku Klux Klan question I popped on you there. That's good. You did good with that. Good.
My mom's from Alabama, so I have to gotta know this stuff.
So y'all know you heard of George Wallace before then. You heard of George Wallace before?
Maybe I can't remember
Don't worry
exactly,
about
but
it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. But you definitely know.
oh
You
yeah.
definitely know. Okay. All right. Okay. Now I want to make sure I get all you guys questions. So if you guys got questions, Natalie, if you have questions, you got, Maya, like let me know. Make sure we get all you guys questions. Okay.
Yeah, might have to leave early since she's commuting, but
Okay. 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 Okay.
another question we had written down was, I know you talked about your dreams and aspirations as a child, so
Yeah.
has that changed at all growing up? And if it has, what influenced those changes? How did you go about them?
Well, no, they haven't, because as a child, you know, Natalia, I didn't feel right. There's something about that Jim Crow stuff. It just didn't feel right for me. So I thought that I wanted to be a teacher. My dad was a teacher, and my mother taught school. My aunt taught school. Also, my grandma was a Sunday school teacher. So I thought I can best do something about that by, having kids, um, to whereas I could, teach them, hey, look, like, yeah, we need to know how to read and write and spell and speak, but we also need to know how to be free. We also need to know how to be free. Okay, so like I wanted to be a teacher. That's what I saw as my way to liberate people. So um, as a social worker, I can do a lot of, I'm not considering myself like I know everything like I can teach, but I can exchange ideas. I can do a lot of idea exchanging. I could do a lot of sharing experiences with those whom I serve. So in growing up, that was my ambition. I always wanted to teach. And it hasn't and what inspired that was growing up in an area where I wasn't free. I wasn't free to drink where I wanted to drink. I wasn't free to be entertained in the method that I wanted to be entertained. I wasn't free to live where I wanted to live, go where I wanted to go. I wasn't free to do that. So I saw teaching as being a way to help myself and also to help our community. Okay, especially like to to help young people. So that my ambition from childhood was shaped by my experiences in growing up in the Jim Crow area, by my family encouraging me to, for lack of a better definition, be all I can be and not be afraid of racism. Not being afraid to speak, especially my uncle. He said, don't be afraid to speak out against racism. He said, don't be afraid. Okay. So, that has shaped my ambitions, that shaped my career. And I'm in a position now in doing social work to fulfill my ambition, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That definitely answered our question. And then I guess a follow-up question would be that you mentioned the role of the women, like your aunt, your grandma, and your mom, as well as the role of men in your life, like your uncle. Were there
Mhm.
any influential people outside of your family, maybe, that kind of were able to shape how you grew up in your path?
Now I thought about that and I struggle because uh, I had a teacher in okay, I had a teacher in elementary school, Sister Mary Theodore. Okay. Um, and she was like, never give up. Like no matter, I mean, you may be, and she liked sports too. She liked sports, and she was a great athlete herself. So in elementary school, we had a baseball team. We had a boys baseball team. We had a girls baseball. She was a girls baseball coach, but she used to come. So the boys and girls games on two different days. So she came to all the baseball games, and so she would she would pick me out individually and say, "Hey, look, like never give up. It's gonna be just keep fighting. No matter what, just keep fighting." Okay. Now I think she was putting it in a sports because the game she told me that we were losing the game. Okay. But she said, listen, say, don't give up. Just keep on, just keep on doing what you do. And so many words. Okay. So she was my eighth grade teacher. No, she was my seventh grade teacher. So yeah. So never give up. So I got that from her. Now wait a minute. I made a mistake. She was my eighth grade teacher. She was my eighth grade teacher. Okay. And she brought in people from the community, for art. She brought a modern artist because I can't draw, but Herman is the one who has the art major. That's the one who can do draw. But she brought in people from the community and two people she brought in. See, it's like there was a baseball player for LA Dodgers called Tommy. Uh, uh, I can't even think of his name. Anyway, Tommy Davis. Okay, he's deceased right now. So she connected with Tommy Davis, and she got us brand new baseball equipment because he donated that. So she just didn't work in the classroom; she worked in the community too. Then she went and got uh, a modern artist to come in and teach us modern art. This was in 1965, 1964, 1965, way back. Okay. So she had connections in the community. It wasn't just about the classroom, it was about the community too. And although she may not be coaching boys baseball, she was a influence to me. That's one person. The other person that I could think of right now, well, two persons. Civics used to be something we learned in high school. We learned how political systems work. Victor Bolzano, who was also an alumnus of St. Mary's, who kind of encouraged me to come to St. Mary's, he was a great influence on me. He taught me civics. He taught me this is how political. He taught me about impeachment. When we had the Trump impeachments, a lot of people were in the dark about that, and I was able to share what I knew about that. What is an impeachment? Is this means that he's convicted, or is it just the aspect of the charge and the trial, like that? So he was influential on me. He actually talked a lot to me about coming to St. Mary's. Okay, he was influential. Another high school teacher I had was DeSerafino. Okay, Mrs. I can't think of Mr. DeSerafino's first name, but he taught. We had driving classes on Saturdays. He taught me how to drive, and in sitting there with him in those classes, he shared some life experiences with me also. And because of my political activism in high school, Alexis and Natalia, that kind of hurt my chances to be recognized in football. My football coach was not for any Black Students Union, which we had that. He was not for any sort of social economic justice efforts. So he really he warned. He said, "Listen," he said, "if you continue this type of activism, you're not going to be recognized." And I was headed into my senior year, okay, but my Mr. DeSerafino, he said, "Listen," he said, everything is going to be okay. You just hang in there and everything is going to be. He never told me stop being an activist. He never told me stop being involved with because my football coach, he's one of the most renowned. He was one of the most renowned. There's a football stadium named after him in Los Angeles now. Okay. He was telling me, like, if you keep this up, you're not getting recognized. And he was really calling the shots in terms of people who were getting recognized in high school football on our, not just on our campus, but in our entire league, in the Catholic League, in the inner city Catholic League of Los Angeles. So those two people, those three, Sister Mary Theodore in elementary school, Mr. Serafino and Mr. Balzano in high school. Those people had influences on me, especially when it comes to knowing how political systems work, in terms to engaging in a struggle and not giving up, not remain optimistic. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on the cause. So those are the three that I could think of. My uncle had a lot of friends in the community who, uh, I mean, he could cook, but then, by us, only having him raise us, like his friends would invite us over for dinner. They would take us to sporting events. They all helped out. So it really was that village surrounding my uncle. That was very important. That was a village of mostly veterans. All those guys were World War II veterans, and they all stuck together. And they were a wealth of wisdom and motivation and inspiration, without just going through like all their names and stuff. But as I said, their homes were our homes. When I was in college, Herman's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, they took me in and fed me. I mean, if I was tired and wanted to take a nap or something like that, I can nap there. Mrs. Brown treated me like a son. She treated me like a son. Um, uh, uh, a couple of other sets of parents also in Los Angeles. I have a very two very good friends. Kamal, we share the same last name, not related, but like brothers. Kamal Abdul Jabbar, Salim Abdul Jabbar. Them and their families and their parents. They helped me a lot too, going through high school, making it through college. They were significant influences on me. Um, That's all I can think of. There may be some more because I thought about that, and thank God I was able to, uh, recall, some of those experiences now for you guys. So that's a few of the people outside of my family who are really influential. But again, I can't reiterate how much it was important to have this life when I got to the Bay Area, to have a life in West Oakland. Reggie LeMay, who was the first Black Student Union president that I remember. Okay, his mother invited us over for dinner. So to have that circle of people going through high school, elementary school, going through college, the parental influence, to have that village, that was very important to me. Okay, that was very significant to me. So those are the people who helped me outside of my family. Okay.
Thank you, Musheer, for sharing.
Thank you for the question.
I
You
think
better get you lost your voice. Alexis lost her voice, I think. You better get some lemon juice. Don't get it, Alexis, don't get it too strong now. Don't get it, just get some lemon. Try to get you some lemons and try to get some honey. And it doesn't have to be a tea. It doesn't have to be a tea, just get some of that because that kind of soothes. That's what those singers use. So don't if you want to type something, she could type something. You want to type something? Can she type? I can't see a chat. Natalia, can you see a chat or something so she could type it in the chat?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's here. She says she wanted to talk, but it hurts more when she does. So I'll
Yeah.
take over for now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, unless there's anything else you'd like to share. We do have class soon, so we should be
Go
going in a
ahead.
little
Go
bit.
ahead. You guys go ahead. See you guys next time.
We
Okay.
appreciate
Thanks. I
your
appreciate y'all.
time.
Y'all take care. Now appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Now take
Thank you
care
so
here.
much.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Love y'all. Take care. Okay.
Bye bye.